Hello there and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 News stream live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. New York Times confirmed the authenticity of a video showing Ukrainian military executing injured Russian soldiers. The head of the Ukrainian diplomacy, Dmytro Kuleba, on Thursday asked NATO members to quickly provide him with all the weapons his country needs to fight Russian forces. Yemen's President Abdelrabbu Mansour Hadi has dismissed the vice president and handed over complete power to a new presidential council. Sri Lanka's government is facing its toughest challenge as protesters call for the president's resignation amid worsening economic crisis. Starting our news with the latest updates over the Russia-Ukraine fight. Kiev appeals to NATO for more weapons as the alliance meets in Brussels. Russia says it has destroyed fuel storage facilities in 4 cities as it is refocused its offensive on eastern Ukraine. Moscow's troops have completed their withdrawal from around Kiev, the United States says. Ukraine's former interior minister has accused Russian snipers of shooting dead 11 civilians in the town of Hostomel near Kiev for target practice. A regional governor in eastern Ukraine has warned citizens that time is running out to flee from Russia's offensive as Moscow moves to seize control of the region. The New York Times confirmed the authenticity of a video showing Ukrainian military executing injured Russian soldiers. The video in question shows Ukrainian soldiers firing several shots in presumably a Russian serviceman lying on the road pavement and showing signs of life. Several bodies can be seen lying nearby, presumably killed. According to the New York Times, the video footage was filmed on March 30th during Russian forces' withdrawal from Kiev. The head of the Ukrainian diplomacy, Dmytro Kuleba, on Thursday asked NATO members to quickly provide him with all the weapons his country needs to fight Russian forces. Kuleba described those countries who are willing to provide Ukraine with defensive weapons and not offensive one as hypocritical.
Thank you very much. My agenda is very simple. It has only 3 items on it. It's weapons, weapons, and weapons. We are confident that the best way to help Ukraine now is to provide it with all necessary to contain Putin and to defeat Russian army in Ukraine. This is my message to the allies. It's very simple. And I call on all allies to put aside their hesitations, their reluctance to provide Ukraine with everything it needs. Because as weird as it may sound, but today weapons serve the purpose of peace. And those countries who are saying we will provide Ukraine with defensive weapons, but we are not in a position to provide them with offensive weapons, they are hypocritical. This is simply unfair, unjustified approach.
The Belgian capital, Brussels, is hosting a 2-day meeting of the foreign ministers of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to discuss the latest developments of the Russia-Ukraine crisis.
NATO foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels for 2 days to reaffirm the Allies' unity and solidarity in the face of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine. Before the meeting, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg condemned Bucha's tragedy and says he fears the discovery of other atrocities.
NATO foreign ministers will meet today and tomorrow. We have all seen the atrocities that have been committed in Bucha and other places in Ukraine. This reveals the true nature of President Putin's war.
The Turkish foreign minister, for his part, said that Ankara is still optimistic and cautious and will continue its efforts to stop the war.
The images we have seen from Bucha and from some other regions damage the relatively positive atmosphere, and we are still hopeful and cautiously optimistic. At the same time, we are realistic. There are difficult issues, but we have to continue our efforts.
Finnish Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto in turn expressed his country's security concerns and the possibility of joining NATO.
And as you probably have heard, Finland has also a very intensive security debate currently. We are preparing from the government side to the parliament a white paper on security, defense and security, and parliament will then actively discuss different options, including a possible NATO membership for Finland.
On February 24, Russia launched a military operation in Ukraine. To end the operation, Russia requires Ukraine to abandon any plans to join military entities, including the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and to adhere to complete neutrality, which Kyiv considers an interference in its sovereignty.
The spokeswoman for the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Maria Zakharova, described the Western media as complicit in Bucha's abuses. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin called the discovery of the civilian corpses in the city of Bucha, near Kiev, after the withdrawal of forces from Moscow, a rude and cynical provocation by the Ukrainian authorities.
I accuse the media, mainly American, not only of spreading false information and misinformation, but also of complicity in crime in the city of Bucha. Clearly, this terrible false criminal scenario was fabricated in order to justify in advance the next package of sanctions.
The United States imposed sweeping new economic sanctions Wednesday on Russia, targeting Russian banks, as well as the President Vladimir Putin's two adult daughters, in response to atrocities in Ukraine that the White House called war crimes.
President Joe Biden's administration imposed sweeping new economic sanctions against major Russian banks, Sberbank and Alfa Bank, including banning Americans from investing in Russia, in order to increase economic pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin.
There's nothing less happening than major war crimes. Responsible nations have to come together to hold these perpetrators accountable.
During his speech at the Legislative Conference of North America's Building Trade Unions in Washington, U.S. President Joe Biden denounced major war crimes by referring to the bodies left in the streets after the withdrawal of Russians and the civilians executed in cold blood in Bucha, near Kiev.
And we're taking additional steps in lockstep with our allies and partners to raise the economic pressure on Putin. First, the United States will impose full blocking sanctions on Sberbank, by far the largest financial institution in Russia, and Alfa Bank, its largest private bank.
The list of sanctions against Russia included as well Putin's two daughters. White House spokesperson Jen Psaki announced the sanctions during her press briefing in Washington.
Well, we've seen a pattern over time of President Putin and Russian oligarchs stash assets and resources in the bank accounts and of their family members. And so this was an effort to get at those assets, and that's why these individuals were sanctioned.
U.S. authorities explained the reason behind targeting Putin's daughters with sanctions, claiming they could be in control of some of their father's assets.
In a televised address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the Russian army has changed tactics and is hiding dead bodies in occupied territory after international outrage over the atrocities committed in Bucha. Let's listen.
It seems that the Russian leadership really got scared of the world wrath. What they saw in Bucha may repeat because of what they may see in other cities, from where we will inevitably kick out the occupier. We have information that the Russian military has changed its tactics, and it's trying to hide killed people from the streets and basements in the occupied territory. If there is no really painful package of sanctions against Russia, and if we do not get the supply of weapons that we really need, which we have asked for many times, it will be considered by Russia as a permission to go further, as a permission to attack, as a permission to start a new bloody wave in Donbass.
In the same line of thought, the UN General Assembly will vote Thursday on whether to suspend Russia from the United Nations premier human rights body. The move was initiated by the United States in response to the discovery of hundreds of bodies after Russian troops withdrew from town near the Ukrainian capital Kiev. sparking calls for its forces to be tried for war crimes. U.S. Ambassador Lena Thomas Greenfield made the call for Russia to be stripped of its seat on 47th member Human Rights Council in the wake of video and photos of streets in the town of Bucha strewn with corpses of what appear to be civilians. Hungarian President Viktor Orban says Hungary is ready to pay for Russian gas in ruble if needed, unlike other European Union countries who have refused Moscow's request. Moscow have threatened to cut off gas supplies to unfriendly countries that refuse to pay in ruble, a move that would mainly affect the heavily dependent EU.
It wouldn't be a problem for us to pay in rubles. If the Russians want to be paid with their currency, we will pay them in rubles. All the atrocities, I believe, have to be investigated. Even if we are living in this mass manipulation era, when eventually we don't know if we can believe in our own eyes on what is happening, we definitely have to protect the civilians. Any atrocities have to be firmly condemned, and all these cases have to be investigated by impartial parties.
To a different matter now, Yemen's President Abdul Rabbu Mansour Hadi has dismissed the Vice President and handed over complete power to a new presidential council. The new reformed body will assume the full responsibilities of both the President and the Vice President and is tasked with leading the country politically and militarily. The details in this report by Marwa Bleo.
The President of Yemen, Abdul Rabbu Mansour Hadi, announced on Thursday the creation of a new presidential council to lead the country. Devastated by war that has raged since 2014 against the Houthis rebels, according to state media.
I'm announcing the creation of Presidential Council to continue the execution of the tasks of the transitional period, and I irreversibly delegate my full powers to this Presidential Council.
The new council will be composed of 8 members and will be headed by Rashad al-Alimi, a former Minister of the Interior and advisor to President Hadi. The government of President Hadi, recognized by the international community and supported since 2015 by a military coalition led by Saudi Arabia, and the Houthis rebels, supported by Iran, have been fighting for power since the insurgents took over the capital Sana'a in 2014. A truce torn by the United Nations came into effect on Saturday, the first day of Ramadan, offering a glimmer of hope in a war that has caused one of the world's most serious humanitarian crises.
Since the start of the truce, we have seen significant reduction of violence. However, there are reports of some hostile military activities, particularly around Marib, which are a concern. We are currently setting up coordination mechanism with the parties to maintain open channels of communication and help them prevent, de-escalate, and manage incidents in support of their commitment to halt all offensive military operations and freeze their positions.
The announcement of the truce came at a time when the discussions on Yemen were being held in Saudi Arabia, in the absence of the rebels who said they refused to participate in talks in enemy territory.
On Thursday, a Turkish court decided to stop the trial of Saudi suspects of the murder of writer Jamal Khashoggi and transfer it to Saudi Arabia, a decision that prompted condemnation from rights groups and comes as Ankara works to repair ties with Riyadh. The decision was expected after the prosecution requested last week that the trial of 26 Saudi suspects be moved from Istanbul to Riyadh. France's nationalist leader still looks like a long shot if she reached a runoff against President Emmanuel Macron. But if her chances were overrated 5 years ago, the opposite could be true this time. More in this report by KFZ.
The race to be France's next president is tightening as election day nears. Emmanuel Macron's lead has dwindled over the past few weeks as opponents from both the far right and far left see an 11th hour rise in support in the polls. Yet Mr. Macron is still holding on to first place after seeing a boost to his numbers in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The French presidential election is split into two rounds, the first taking place on April 10th. The top candidates from that result will then proceed to a head-to-head runoff on April 24th. Short of a last-minute political disaster, Mr. Macron is all but guaranteed to make it to the second round. His old rival, Marine Le Pen, the leader of the hard-right National Rally, currently holds second place, suggesting a rematch of 2017's second round could take place when Macron beat her with 66% of the vote to 34%. Close behind Ms. Le Pen is Jean-Luc Mélenchon, a fiery leftist representing France and Baud, who also ran in 2017. Both of these candidates have seen their polling numbers rise in recent days, as Mr. Macron's boost from the Ukraine war begins to fade. The rise appears to have come at the expense of Éric Zemmour, a hard-right candidate who had initially challenged Le Pen for the second-place spot. Mr. Zemmour of Reconquest dominated the early days of the campaign, gaining media coverage with provocative statements on immigration and Islam in France, and at one stage overtook Ms. Le Pen in the polls last year. His popularity has now shrunk, and he finds himself jostling between the third and fourth spot with Valérie Pécresse, the centre-right candidate. Ms. Pécresse had come close to taking the second-place spot at the end of last year, in what would have been a reversal of fortune for her centre-right party, the Republicans, historically a governing party of France that has seen support collapse in recent years. Her growing irrelevance pales in comparison to that of Anne Hidalgo, of the Socialists, whose closest cousins are Labour in the UK. If Ms. Le Pen does make it to the second round, she still faces an uphill battle, as polling suggests Mr. Macron will take over half of the vote if they go head-to-head. Ms. Le Pen is, however, the candidate that comes closest to beating Mr. Macron, and is on track to improve upon her showing in 2017. Mr. Macron's lead in the second round is still comfortable, however, particularly against Mr. Zemmour, who fares worst among the top candidates so far, polling suggests.
Sri Lanka's government is facing its toughest challenge as protesters call for the president to resign from his position amid the worsening economic crisis in the country. Islam Seed on what follow.
Food and fuel shortages as well as record prices and outages have caused widespread misery in Sri Lanka. Unrest has erupted as a result of anger over the economic crisis and the government's handling of the issue. The anti-government protests were extended among school and university students and various sectors of the working class. Thousands of government school teachers and principals demonstrated around the country in several education divisions. Many social parties and school committees engaged in the rallies with chants declaring that the president must be ousted, but it had to be replaced by workers' and peasants' government. Protests outside the President Colombo mansion grew violent on Thursday, bringing the protesters' fury to the president's doorstep. Analysts say that although Sri Lankans have been enduring through 13 hours of daily power cuts during the hottest time of the year, long lines for fuel and shortages of food needs, like milk, powder and rice, the resolve is only likely to harden.
Hundreds of demonstrators threw stones at police and blocked roads in the coastal region of ICA Peru to protest against the rising fuel prices and tolls. The violence came a day after President Pedro Castillo lifted a curfew in Lima amid extreme protests across the country. A farm worker who was taking part in the roadblock died on Wednesday following clashes with police, while several other people were injured. In Colombia, thousands of bikers are protesting against a decree that prohibits them from carrying passengers overnight from Thursday to Saturday. This measure was imposed by Mayor Claudia Lopez, who justified it by insecurity and a terrorist threat hanging over the capital as the presidential elections approach. The Colombian government calls a legitimate military operation in which, according to local residents and human rights organizations, 11 civilians portrayed as guerrillas killed in action. Defense Minister Diego Molano told the press that the legitimate operation had been planned for months with intelligence information. Let's take this report.
This is a legitimate operation, and it is a legitimate operation because it was planned for more than 5 months, with information from our naval intelligence services and our army. And this is a legitimate operation because it was conducted in conjunction with an arrest warrant, because we had identified where the leader was and his structure and how they were intimidating carrying out activities and drug trafficking in the municipality of Puerto Leguizamo.
During recent disclosures of an alleged massacre of 300 residents in the town of Mora by Malian army and foreign mercenaries, the country's military head came on the national television to defend his soldiers. General Omar Diarra, on the other hand, denied any misconduct.
The FAMAs intervened in Mora not to go and kill civilians whose protection we're responsible for. We intervened in Mora as part of our sovereign mission to defend the integrity of territory, protection of persons and their property. So I would like to say that the Malian army is a multi-ethnic army and cannot afford such actions.
At this point, we come to an end. And before we wrap up our news, here is a reminder for our main headlines. New York Times confirmed the authenticity of a video showing Ukrainian military executing injured Russian soldiers. The head of Ukrainian diplomacy, Dmitry Kuleb, on Thursday asked NATO members to quickly provide him with all the weapons his country needs to fight Russian forces. Yemen's President Abdel Rabbu Mansour Hadi has dismissed the vice president and handed over complete power to a new presidential council. Sri Lanka's government is facing its toughest challenge as protesters call for president's resignation amid worsening economic crisis. With this, our program comes to an end. Thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.